I guess first of all, what I want to do is go around the table and everybody introduce themselves.
Gary Ross, Public Works Director.
Dave Bova, Community Development.
Eric Bennett, Police Chief.
Bob Mueller, local citizen in the flood area, if it ever breaks.
I'm Felix Martin, Emergency Management Director.
Steve Besmer, I'm with SEMA, the Region C Rural Coordinator.
I'm Robert Eck, I'm with the Levy District.
Norm Gallup, Plant Operator, Levy District 3, and Areas and CERT Emergency Coordinator.
Mike Gilbert, the Alderman. And then I'll ask for the mayor.
Steve Elsey with Citizens Electric.
And Mark's with the newspaper.
Mark, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I appreciate y'all coming. I promise you here, within an hour, we're going to get out. We'll be out of here. I don't want to drag this on. But I thought it was, the reason I wanted to do this is because in the last couple of flood events, especially in 2016 when we had a big flood event, the water was coming fast, there were some questions of the levee being topped. We riled up all the citizens, a lot of the citizens in the floodplain that would have been affected were going to have some problems. They got, we worried a lot of people, and we don't necessarily want to do that. This flood event, I was concerned too about, well, I talked to Martin, and I talked to the chief about what do we do if we have to evacuate people, and David come up with a letter, and we posted who would be affected in the floodplain and how much. But what we don't want to do is unnecessarily startle people. But what I also want to know, everybody needs to know, is this levee it's 20 years in the making now. It's a great levee. Matter of fact, I was talking to Vernie, and he says when the Corps was down here, Felix, they says of all the levees we have to worry about, this is not one of them. Right. But there are some things that we have to do to maintain it when we're into a flood event. And I put out, Bob did some paperwork on the recent, since the levee, the most recent flood events in the last 15, 20 years. And what we do know is that they're getting more consistent. We're seeing more flooding every year. So what all I want to do is from this point forward, and considering we're still not under flood stage yet. And this has been a long event. It was similar to 93, and just didn't get that high. But what we want to do today is I want to look at, I put out some things is, one of the questions are, what are some good things that come out of this event? We looked at, there was some good things. Well, first good thing I can see is our levee held. We had folks that were at 40 feet, were monitoring the levee. One of the things we struggled with this year was volunteers to walk the levee. And I know what it's like because I put some time in down there walking, and I understand it better now. And people don't quite understand it. And we get comfortable, like I say, behind that. But it is a man-made levee, and it's got to be maintained. Sandbags were an issue. I remember out there one night we were out there and we needed sandbags. Well, we called the city and they brought sandbags out to do some prep work. So, but I just wanted to, like I say, wanted to learn something from this. One of the things that Bob said, well, and it makes sense, and I've asked this question since I've been mayor, does the city have an emergency preparedness? Do we have a plan? And I was always told, well, we're kind of piggyback off Felix, and Felix is our go-to guy, and that's one I got to say. One of the things, kudos to Felix, because anytime you call and you got questions, he's there. Anybody, you always talk to Felix and Vern, anybody from the levee board. There's some good quality people that we have monitoring this levee, and we're fortunate. We are very fortunate. But as these guys get older, we got to have some things. I think we need some things written down in the future.
Let's talk about
Yeah, older. So I want to open it up. I'm going to let Norm talk about, because you spent countless hours out on the levee. And one of the things that, and is always when you're out there, well, when they're communicating, because I think they're on a police channel, well, watch what we communicate because we don't want to rile up people. But we had some problems with the levee, but I think it was all managed very well.
Well, I guess what do you want to know about the levee?
Well,
I was out there 700 and some hours, and I'm still out there on and off because we still got the gates closed as far as through the levee with drainage pumping water from the north and south Gabourey slowed down considerably now with the lack of rain. But we had a considerable amount of seepage through the levee, mainly due to the length of time that we were under flood stage. I've been, since our first activation out there on the New Year 16 flood, I've been developing a database of all of our seepage areas. And that continues to build every year we're out there. So it's the first places I look once I go out there. And it's being fairly consistent with, we start seeing our problems around 41.5 to 42 feet. Is when we start seeing our seepage areas. You know, it was, volunteers has always been the biggest issue. We utilize Facebook for it. I hate using Facebook, but it is our biggest resource for getting volunteers, and we had 102 volunteers this year out of 49 days that I had the Aries and CERT activated. One of the problems that we ran into is the hearsay. I think officially any news coming or related to the levee needs to be seen at either the emergency management's website, the city's website, or our website, or a combination of all three. You know, to get the official update of what the condition of the levee is.
Bob, let me stop you there. You were on the ground. How did you? And did you get any information, or were you looking for any information? Were you?
Well, there was two ways. I always watched the Chester gauge, I mean, pretty religiously. The other thing was the hearsay, the leakage under the north gates. That was about the only thing I heard about. I didn't hear a lot about sand boils or anything else like that.
We try to keep that real quiet. We're not on the police frequency.
I didn't know.
We use our own frequencies to communicate with our teams and our headquarters. We would like to eventually streamline our communications in the event of an emergency with law enforcement and such, to where it just makes a quicker response.
Felix, a question for you. You're up and down the levees all the way north and south. With the problems we have with our levee, does it concern you a lot, or just because it seemed to me like, and even when I was out there and you were out there that night, these guys never got none of these ever got rattled.
Oh, no.
You know, but
No, the only concern, I mean, not even a concern, an issue that we need to address is that the first, like Norm said, the first place we saw a weak spot in 16 is the same place we see it resolve this year. So the levee district is already looking to do something about that, either relief wells or something. But
Yeah.
there's something right there. And we see that, you know, the farmers levee see the same. They got one place that they, after the '93 flood, when they rebuilt it, that one particular place is where they see their problems all the time with under seepage and that. So it's pretty common.
Do you have those marked, or do you have GPS
I
coordinates?
GPS everything.
Okay.
Even the ones that we're just monitoring it's borderline whether it's a concern or we mark everything, GPS locate it, and then monitor it, and then as days develop or hours develop, then we can determine it's just groundwater seeping out or it's an actual boil. And then we downgrade or upgrade.
I mean, the biggest issue I heard with, you know, like Bob said, up the gate, and Gary did a fantastic job on the middle gate with the wedges and everything. I think somehow we need to apply that to the north gate, and Gary's looking at that. So once we get that rail issue under control up north, the road is not an issue. This is the two rails up there that are an issue up there. So once you get that under control, the pumps, that can handle anything coming under the gates with no problem. So.
And that was a good thing in this event. As long as that water was up, we were very, very fortunate that we didn't have a lot of rain on this side of the levee.
Yeah.
That we were having to did a tremendous amount of pumping.
977 hours.
How
So
many
far,
hours?
977 hours as of today.
Pumping to get it
Yes.
across there.
Yes.
So we were fortunate that we didn't have big rain events. And So that was a good thing that come out of this event. I think a good thing to come out of this event is as long as that water was on that levee, how well that levee performed. I mean, that's incredible to me.
Oh, it's probably one of the best designed levees.
Yeah, that's what Vern keeps telling me, so I feel good about that. But what I want to do is and think about is how do we communicate? Communication is very difficult because, like I say, you don't want to startle people, but we got to be mindful that hey, we're on alert. I know at 40 foot, the patrols kick in on the levee. I think we had good, and there was a question, and we had a problem with people on the levee. So that's one thing that we can establish with this is at 40 feet, we need to keep the public off of the top of the levee because you got patrol vehicles and you have police, because we had county and city police out there monitoring things. So that needs to be a set rule that at 40 feet that no public, and naturally people are going to come and look at the river, but it's kind of dangerous in those circumstances to have them up there.
Yeah.
Not dangerous, but it's just, anything could happen.
Well, and I understand people's curiosity, but you got the Marina Road. If they got to get that close to see it, I mean,
Yeah.
you can go anywhere and see the flood when we get to that high. So, it's always been my stand that my people's safety is first. And so, at 40 feet, I've always agreed. Once we're out there, traffic needs to stop. So that it eliminates some of the potential hazards for my own people. And it also cuts down on the wear and tear on that levee.
Right.
We've got all kinds of potholes out there now just from this flood event.
Right.
I think you might want to do something officially with the city to make that, I don't know if you have any, not knowing how the laws are written, if you have any legal to give.
Yeah, that was always a question. I don't think we have any legal. I mean, and it's really the city, really the levee board has to decide.
I mean, most of the northern levees is in city limits.
Yeah.
With the exception of it's a few hundred yards.
Right.
The southern part is, I don't know how much is in the city limits or not. But, there's something I could take to the commissioner too and make it on the south side too.
That's something that needs to happen. Because it is, in any other time other than that, I always looked at the top of that levee is a great place to walk, bike, but when we're in a flood event, it needs to be,
I mean, you can make, according to the state rules, you can declare the
State of emergency.
the state of emergency, not a state, but city emergency.
Right.
According to the state guidelines, or, at 40 foot, you could declare it and give authority to Eric and his guys so that they can do something
Right.
in the counties.
We'll have to run that by the board, I guess. We'll have to talk about that. So, and then I wanted to also, I have a letter, David, we were going to send this letter out to people, because David, explain what you guys did when you marked all the houses, that when that water was coming up, how people would be affected, and what your plan was. We didn't do it because I'm thinking, well, we don't want to rile people up, but going forward, I think this might be something we can talk to people about and let people know. So.
Sure. I mean, I have information available for flash flooding and flood preparedness and all this other flood insurance, but what we talked about was in the event that there was a disaster, a flood, or the levee topped or breached, who would be affected. And the FEMA maps kind of cover that because there's a zone that is protected by the levee, and that comes well into the city up to about 3rd Street, and a lot of the other city east of that. And what we wanted to do was send out a letter to those folks who really are very wonderfully protected by the levee, but just in case something were to happen, what would be the procedures, what are the suggestions in advance, where to get official communication, what route to take out of town, and so on and so forth. And that's what Mayor Hassler had talked about, sending that out once things calm down so that people don't get
Now I'm feeling better about sending it out when the levee's at 44 feet, you know, and I didn't want to send that letter out, but that's why on the back end of this, I wanted to send it out to people, and we'll run that by Bob, because he lives in the city.
Well, I think, it really depends on where the levee would fail.
Right.
I mean, it was so apparent when you went out on the Marina Road and looking at the water on the right side of the river versus the left side. So, I mean, it depends on if it was on the north side, which would be the worst,
Yeah.
or the south side. So, actually, you can use Google Earth to do at various levels where it would end up in town and what would be impacted. I think you really need to look at that and almost go down the whole length of the levee at various points and say, okay, if it fails here, where's it going to end up? And you really don't know about the Gabby Creeks. That's the real kicker in all of it. But you can generally say this is where it's going to impact in the town. Same thing if it's ever going to over top the levee, you probably want to break it on the bottom end. If you ever, I don't know if we even have a plan for something like that, because that would minimize damage on the north end of town.
Well, according to the Corps, and I just pulled this off there, and they say at 53 feet, near this height, the St. Genevieve County levee number 3 is over top, 53 feet. So that's a lot of water. I would like to think and hope in my lifetime I would never ever see that. But there's people sitting and I was sitting in 93 when it got 49 feet. So, but at that high and that much water on top of the levee, anything can happen. The further it climbs up that levee.
I just think you have some tools available to, it really depends on the level of the water, where it breaks on the levee, and
Right.
what's inside the levee at the time.
Well, I think there's a misconception because of Hollywood and stuff too. When a levee breaks, it ain't gonna flood everything all of a sudden. You got time.
Yeah, you have time to get people out.
Well, when the farmers won at 2 o'clock in the morning, it wasn't until Monday afternoon before it really started showing up here by the Marina Road, so it takes a while.
Where did that break out? Did it break out before it did the last time?
No, you know what we call the Griffith House down there?
Was it north of the Cottonwood Road?
It was north of River Rock Falls.
Oh, okay.
There's a house, the only house on the left there is right next to that. Well, Kurtz had some farm machine
Yeah,
shop.
I know what's happening.
And as far as where it floods, as far as how far into the city it floods, it all depends on, like you said, the river elevation at the time. We're close enough here, where it broke down at Dodge Creek down there, and Mitchell Island, where they did an intentional breach on the farmer's levee. The water we see up here will only go to the elevation of what it was down there where it broke. That's why we had lower water on the south levee than we had on the main north levee.
And the other thing to remember too is that, our levee, like you said, 53 feet. You're looking at Caskey and Boyle Buell and Farmers, they're all 50 foot or less.
50 feet, yeah.
So it's kind of hard those will start going way before ours.
Right,
should.
right.
Just as far as
That's-
overtopping, there's always other things that get you.
Yeah. But when they get close to 50 foot, they're gonna have a lot harder time holding it too than what this levee will. That's 50 foot.
I think what Bob and Norm are talking about would be great for a potential emergency preparedness plan. This letter would just be to notify people of the potential and what to
Right.
do in preparation. It would talk about things like, flood insurance isn't just for people who are in a flood zone, things like that.
Is there a plan for shutting off utilities in the event of a flood? And is it level dependent? I mean, that's the,
Man behind you, tell you, about one utility.
For electric, the answer is yes. It's dependent. I mean, we were shutting things off in St. Mary, for instance, and some areas weren't even flooded, but, at certain levels, it's like we're going to start isolating, trying to maintain as much service as possible, but isolating lines,
I think with the flood that was up north a couple of years back and that town caught on fire, gas is one of the most important things.
Spire was in here multiple times too, asking for the flood zones.
And do we have local people that can do the shut-offs, or do they have to come from Festus or someplace else to do that?
They probably got local people who shut it down. What do you think?
Yeah.
That way she can be able to get to the mains and shut the mains down. Same way with sewer, and water sewer you probably can't shut down, but the water you can shut that down.
I guess the question is, does gas and electricity and, I guess those are the main ones, and water, know at what levels, what zones they have to shut down? Is that a good, do we have a plan, I guess?
I would say we do not have a plan.
Citizens probably has a plan.
Citizens
Spire has a plan.
Inspire, but which that's what you would need, you know, because if I remember right, in 2016, they had Spire was in here going to shut because they thought that they were going to go over the top, so.
But they were talking about pulling individual meters at that time.
Yeah.
It wasn't like shutting down a main.
No.
And I think, the citizenry also needs to know how big the area, it's not gonna just shut down to the water's edge and forward, it's gonna be areas.
Outside the area.
So if they're gonna do pumping or stuff, they're gonna have to get their, auxiliary generators and pumps ready to go or something at that level.
There's a whole lot that goes in emergency preparedness.
Yes, there is. A lot.
And that's where, and I asked that question early on when I became mayor, do we have a plan? And pretty much not, and we have good intentions, but it takes time and it takes energy, and it's probably something that we really need to outsource to get that done, I would think anyway. Somebody that does that, and so.
Does SEMA have any help with that?
We don't really have anybody who specifically would kind of come in. There was a time probably where we had more personnel who could do that, but we really don't have the depth on the planning side.
They got the template. that you-
We have, templates you can use and things, and
When the state going, it actually changed into what they call an ESF form, which is different than what we have currently. We have the annex form, I guess you call it. So the different type, there are two different types of ESF one, probably the easiest one to make, I would think.
yeah, a lot of
Or
times for
maybe
smaller
come from
communities,
scratch.
it kind of depends what best fit is, but I'm glad to try to help if you need to look at something or advise or whatever.
Is there 17 different ESFs? 16 or 17, yeah. And each one is one like communication, one law enforcement, fire, and all that, so you could specify under each one exactly what they should be doing, so.
Dave, you're pretty good at talking to other towns about various things that might touch a couple of the river towns and see if they have.
I've reached out. I mean, there are plans out there, school district, other municipalities, county, but it's a large project, so.
Yeah, our current plan was written in 04, 08, so back in there, and they actually had a grant that
Right.
done it for it, so it's,
You have to imagine it'd be quite expensive doing that. So,
yep. And you'd have to have somebody with experience to even know what to do, so. I mean, SEMA does offer a class every so often, how to prepare an emergency operating plan too. So,
I can look for grants also, but I definitely think it's something that we need to outsource or get some help with.
Yeah, I think so too. I'll talk to Martin and the board. We need that, especially going forward. It's going to make, it's just, when you have a plan, on the river we have, it's called a waterway action plan. And man, those bullet points hit. And we're starting at 25 feet in St. Louis, here's what you do on the river, 30 feet, it tells you what you do, that at this point they close, and it makes it just so much easier for everybody. And everybody's on the same page, and I mean, that's a big broad spectrum, but still there's some things we need to have here in the city to do that, I always wondered that, Gary's time, well, we're closing the gates. Well, who called that shot? So Felix is in the middle of it, and they were talking to the railroad because you got so many different moving parts, and we had in this, we had some confusion because Mississippi Lime started to load out at the marina. Well, there wasn't a lot of, there was some there was community, the levee district knew all about it, the levee districts knew, but not everybody else knew.
It was burning up the Facebook.
Yeah, it was burning it up, you know, and here, you got the levee patrol coming through there, and then you got truck traffic going the other way, and it was kind of confusing, so, but I understood it, and everything worked out great, because, you know, you had good people monitoring and managing it, so, but those are things, I think that's the biggest thing that comes out of this, is some kind of action plan that we have. You know, I know everybody knows what they need to do in this event, because we've been through several of them. Heck, in the short time I've been, it's been 3 events now, you know. But I can guarantee you there are going to be more. They're going to continue because things are changing. The weather's changing, things are changing, so we're going to have to monitor that and be ready.
I'm already prepping for the next one.
Ready for the next one. Yeah. You got your volunteers lined up?
Good part of them.
Yeah. Yeah, but we need, it's good for city people that, and we had that too. We had some people that live in the city that come to help. We had firemen that come from Farmington, you know, to help, so I thought.
State Fire Marshal service in.
Yeah.
I think I had a total of 16 people from out of, as far as Fire Mutual Aid,
Yeah.
between City of Farmington and Farmington Fire Department and State Fire Marshal Service. I think there were 16 people
Yeah,
that they sent for several weeks.
that's good.
One of the things is, you know, you needed more volunteers,
Yes.
and now's the time to expand your list. And I saw in the paper you do have a list. And then training is one of those things that you do periodically beforehand. You never know when it's gonna hit.
I find that I have to do training on the spot all the time because they don't do it every day. So every new volunteer that comes in, even the ones that's worked for me in the past, I gotta refresh them.
Remedial training is
Yes.
better than initial
Oh, yes.
training, so that's why you do it when the water's
Yeah.
down occasionally.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain what a sand boil looked like if they'd seen one, you know, do.
The other thing is knowing what your people need. I mean, I heard,
Sorry about that.
I heard, you know, via the grapevine, they needed water, they needed bug spray and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah, we're completely a volunteer organization, so we have no funds of ourselves other than donations, and so it helps when we get donations, whether food or water or
you just need
whatever
to
resource.
have it out there someplace,
Yes.
because this is a giving community, and they'll support you.
Yeah. But as much as I hate Facebook, it's a reality. It's here and it's not going away. So we need to, in order to control a lot of the hearsay, we need to get control of it. And it has to be, if you want official information about the levy, it has to come from certain sites, off the Facebook pages.
Well, that's the first thing I got on mine, if you don't hear it here, it's not true, basically.
Yeah.
You know, it's an official site, so it's not on that one, it's not necessarily true.
And one good thing about that is as small as this and where we're at, we can get, I mean, I can call you, anytime I ask a question, I call you or Vern or you or ask anything about that, so that's a positive. And we do have, fortunately, we have police that are on the streets too, you know. That's what I love about it. I'll talk to Gary, well, how did you know to put the barricades up? Well, the policeman told me there's water running over the street, so that's nice. You know, it's nice to have that.
Well, we had, from our standpoint, we had a fantastic a relationship and cooperation with both city and law enforcement, and we couldn't have asked for a better cooperation than what we had this year.
So that's a good thing to come out of this event, you know, so. Looking at my list here. That was one of my questions on how can we get more volunteers to patrol the levee. And I think I like that what Bob talked about. We need to be talking about that prior to the event, you know, so.
And it all depends, you know, with volunteers, I mean, people work.
Yeah,
So,
well, that
I
was
mean,
my problem.
So it's all dependent on who's available when.
Right.
You know, I've got, first thing I do when I go into an activation is call up previous volunteers. Can you work? And if you can, when? these are our shifts. So I've got a core group that always shows up, but most of them work. So I'm still reliant on volunteers, and I've got outside agencies that I call upon, but they're volunteers as well. So it's just a matter of who's available when. And so when we have bare spots in our shifts, then we go to Facebook and we start calling on volunteers.
So does the levy district have Facebook? When you say we go to
No.
Facebook, or did you
I'm
use the
talking
city?
about our St. John County Aries and CERT team.
I got an EMA one.
Yeah.
You have an ENA, but you
Yeah.
have,
Yes, we have a Facebook, St. John County Aries has a Facebook page, and I know the city has a Facebook page. And
I think Sandra put it on the business St. Genevieve too, or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
And then one of the questions I have right now is, we had this flood event, and I know the levee board takes care of this, but I noticed when we were out there, when the water was coming up, we knew it was, especially on the south end, when we knew they were gonna let water in, it was a mad dash to go down there and put, what do you call that? It's meant,
we use bentonite to fill out all snake and mouse holes and
Yeah.
everything along both levees,
yeah, so.
north of, and
And I guess after this, my question is, will this levee be inspected? Now that the water's
It's
going down?
inspected.
Will the Corps come down, and who does that?
typically, the Corps does a quick inspection once a year. And then once every 5 years, they do what they call periodic inspection. And they actually bring down anywhere from 4 to 8 people, and they just walk the whole levee.
Really?
Yep. Both sides, they walk the whole length of it. They do that every 5 years.
Every 5 years?
I mean, that's what it used to be.
And I guess that's where that big list comes
2
from.
years, I think, when was the last time they were there? 2 years ago?
yeah,
Something like that.
Can we call and request an additional one after an event?
Well, most of them people are contracts, so I don't know. But, I mean, they also got a farmer that goes out there, cutting hay off of it. That's probably the best thing that can happen to that levee, because anything out there that explodes, I've been with since, I don't know, 04 or so, and we have never had an issue with, we had one groundhog this year, I think, and it wasn't even affecting the levee where it was. But in all them years, I don't remember anything major that, like a groundhog or anything like that going on.
Red armadillo too.
They're getting worse.
That's really the biggest concern I got, armadillos on that thing.
But I know from, that we are gonna make a point every flood that we're gonna be walking the outside levees to fill any holes with bentonite. That's gonna happen from here on out, from now on.
You're gonna have that. Rodents are gonna get in.
Yeah.
What's ideal habitat?
When they do the yearly and periodic inspections, that's probably the most write-up you get is
Yeah.
rodent holes.
Yeah.
You probably get 50 of them every time they come through. And you go back and look for them, a lot of times you can't even find them because they kind of cover themselves off when you drive on them and stuff like that. But, yeah, the best thing they do is keep that thing mowed with that guy cutting hay off of it.
Bob, you have any more questions?
Just a couple of things. One, on behalf of the citizens, thank you for doing that all the time.
It's our pleasure.
Something I think I mentioned to you several years ago, pre-filled sandbags, stockpiling them, because when you need them, and the river's coming up quick. If we can find some place to do that and store them, maybe.
Well, the biggest problem with sand, well, a couple of problems really. One is sand, to get the sand here and store it, it's hard to do. Because sand's actually hard to come by nowadays. That's why we use screening a lot of the time. And the Corps really don't want to give out sandbags unless it's for public use. So,
Well, I'm thinking about even for sand boils and stuff
yeah,
like
well,
that.
Gary does that.
Usually,
Gary's
we try to keep 500 on hand fill.
And Gary's pretty good about, when the river starts coming up, he'll fill some.
Yeah,
And they store some down at the pump house too, so.
there are sandbag filling machines that various towns use. I mean, it's something you may want to look at to speed it up rather than a shovel and a cone.
Got a state got a couple of them that
You can request them, but you-
request, but usually you got, we're so far downriver, they're usually upriver already.
Yeah.
One of the other things I might suggest you take a look at, I was doing some research, this is the Fort Bend County, Texas levee districts using drones with infrared to look at boils and,
We're looking at that.
you know,
Getting, funding.
give you this, they also look for rodent stuff. You might even be able to do night vision goggles for the people at night looking at sand boils. I mean, they're probably just using flashlights. Is there any technology that can help us?
I've got infrared as well as night vision that I sometimes utilize for nighttime operations.
Good, yeah.
But we're just toward the end, we're starting to look at drones to get into the more remote areas, that, particularly at night, where we don't have to trudge through a bunch of mud in order to inspect a boil.
Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that I think could help us down the road and make it easier for you. And go after grants for it, whatever, because that's probably the more serious thing that could happen to the levee, other than overtopping, is a boil.
Every flood that we work, I'm constantly revising of how we do it, to more streamline it and make it better every time that we go out there to. We're never going to reduce the manpower. In fact, we're just going to have to keep increasing manpower. But as far as equipment-wise, we can streamline things with technology.
And that's one thing I learned this flood event. This was my first one to be out there on the levee, but after doing it for quite a while, is even in this event, as it went along, they got a whole lot better because they knew where everything was at, we knew where our problems were, and we picked up a vehicle that had 4 seats in it, where it was for me, it was so much easier for your help, because they would drop us off and then boom, and then you would walk to them, and man, that made all the difference in the world, you know. And once I knew what I was looking for, that was incredible. And we're fortunate to have that vehicle, and then the levee district had a vehicle, so it made it a whole lot better for the volunteers that are out there.
Yeah, we're trying to get the funding now to get another 4-seater, because 2-seaters, it's not enough.
Yeah.
So we're looking at trying to get another 4-seated side by side.
Yeah.
So, like I said, to make these events even more streamlined.
Yeah. So that was good. I learned a lot on this. You know, because I was the same way previous to. I'd hear this stuff and I'd hear boils and stuff, but going out there to see it and to see the way it was monitored and then just going through it, it was an incredible experience. It's a lot of work, but I think, you know, just like I say, that levee amazes me. It's just it's nice, you know. But there again, there's people maintaining it too. There's a lot of money spent maintaining it, you know. Now there's a bunch of cleanup work to do, all the debris that's on it. And that's one thing the farmer did. He took a bunch of debris off of it, you know, so he could mow in it. Now it even looks like, doesn't look that, you know, even you can see green again on the levee, you know. So
I know one of the things that we do out there when we're patrolling is all of our volunteers, whether particular new ones, they get a good education of how the levee works. And we've got an intricate system out there. It's more than just soil and sand holding back water. And we've got relief wells and we've got pumps, and everything works in unison. And as long as everything's working good, we've got a good levee. But people don't realize just how intricate that system is, how many parts there are to that.
Cost of running it.
And the cost of running it. So everybody gets a good education that comes out there, and that brings more people back. It brings people back to volunteering for more hours or more shifts after they see just what's all involved.
Keeps the interest up.
Yes,
And would you say the electric bill was, Robert, in 1 month?
$19,000.
19,000.
For 1 month?
Yeah, 1 month, $19,000 to run pumps.
And we've been running
1
for
month.
5 months.
5 months we've been running pumps down there, so that just blows me
And that was
away.
multiple pumps that month. but
Yeah.
As long as you run a single pump, it ain't quite that bad, but it's still 4 or 5 thousand. It's very expensive.
Do you have video or pictures of
I take
sand
pic- I
boils,
take
pump
pictures.
operating?
Yeah, he
I
does.
didn't
I
know if
take
maybe you
pictures
could
and-
team up with somebody and maybe make a training video, a little less work for yourself.
That's what we're
Okay.
working on. We've got 3 floods now that we've worked on, and we've got pictures from each flood. We just started this year with videoing some of it. You know, it's always, we're trying to make it easier in the teaching. I'm out with every shift. This year, I streamlined it a little bit. We used to have every 4 hours, we had a shift going out. This year, I changed that a little bit because I'm out there every shift. And so my only sleep is in between shifts. Before, you know, I just had to take 1 shift off and get 4 hours of sleep. This year, I changed it to 3-hour shifts with 3-hour breaks in between, to where I could get an hour and a half sleep between three of the 4 shifts. And that helped a lot. But then, you know, so I'm out there with, what I'm trying to say is, I go out there with every crew. New road, I go out there with every crew, and if they're new particularly, they get stuck with me. Or one of the people that I know is going to give them proper information.
But if you had a video, you could
Yeah.
hand them an iPad and say, watch this,
Yeah.
and I'll be back, and if you have
Yeah.
questions.
I think that would be good too, and educating the public too.
Yeah.
I would really like to do that people know what that is and what happens out there, because for so long, I just looked at, well, that's just a dam out there to keep me from seeing the river.
Citizens got some good aerial, if you can get hold of those, some good aerial pictures of those last flood. I mean, I took them.
Perhaps Dr. Smith's people
They
up
got
at the
some
school.
fantastic.
Already there with you.
Okay, they do some really neat stuff.
I can't commit them, but
Yeah.
they're looking for things to do.
Yeah, that's one thing that surprised me too is, you know, I'd be out there one night and then I'd come back the next night and there'd be 2, things change pretty fast out there. It can at times.
We have been out there at the beginning shift, go through once and not see anything, come back at the end of that shift, and we've got all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Or just a few things changed, you know. It's a constant changing action out there.
Yeah. So,
And that's why we run the shifts the way we do, because you just can't leave anything to chance.
You know, when that levee broke down below us at 2 o'clock in the morning, too dark to do any filming, but the current was so bad going in there that we had to go in and, we had to get to conservation and go in and get somebody out of the house. And his boat couldn't even hardly fight that current, that's how fast that current was coming in there. So that, you know, that's something we need to look at. Where is, like Bob said, depending on where it breaks at. If it breaks halfway down the levee, we're in pretty good shape because the current is going away from it. But up there in the northern end is where the current is worse.
that
That's
seems to
where
be
it's
the
rated.
northern end is where they got it beefed up. They
That's
know
where they
that
got-
because it's rip-wrapped all the way around that corner up there, so.
Once it gets past the pump house, the current is going away from it more than anything, so. But that would, and what really made down there, when that levee broke, the next day I went down and looked at it, and that house that we had to rescue from was out of water. Monday, it was back in water, but that water, just everything came north, and then it started backing back up to it.
Yeah, backing up the field back in, so. Well, we're not gonna have that happen. That levee's not gonna
No.
break.
All right.
I'm telling you that right now. It's,
Not on my watch.
yeah.
It would take a big failure on somebody's part for that to happen.
Yeah,
And that-
yeah.
Too well
As long as it's
monitored.
not Mother Nature.
It would, you know, something,
Yeah,
you know, with the tree screen and everything, you can't, the chances of even a boat breaking loose and hitting it
yeah.
is slim, because they can't get through them trees. That's one of the purposes of the screen, plus the current, keep the current.
But you know, and I always stop because when on the river, there's always yelling at the towboaters and minimal weight, minimal weight. But I went back down there after the water went down, I seen what the wake does. You can see the wake in the road on the levee from where the water washed and built up and all the way down there. So yeah, that has a lot of effect on the levee, especially when it's saturated.
If you look at the farmer's levee on the riverside, you can really see, like every day, they would do a line and then
Yeah.
after a while, they'd do another line, so.
And it ain't just the riverboats that affect that. I've seen a lot of fishermen out there that just barreling down through that river, close to the levee, and that wave wash comes up on the levee. So, I mean, it's just not the riverboats that does the damage.
I noticed on the farmer's levee, there was a guy with a front scooping off the front,
Inside.
side and piling it on top. Was that to keep that from overtopping on the
Yeah.
north end?
But for that particular reason, they can only, it's regulated to like 46 feet, 47 feet. And they knew they were going to let it in on the lower end, so they were trying to build up the upper end to let it backfill, so it wouldn't top up here.
Wouldn't
All
top.
that got to be taken back off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just like a safeguard until they got the water inside. But yeah, they did that in 16 too, 17, whatever it was. And they took it off, and now they want to have to go back and take it off again, to get it back down to regulated height.
Well, I think we had there was a lot of good things that come out of this meeting, a lot of good points. What we need to do is, we need to take that and probably come back to the table, I don't know, maybe a month and a half, even 2 months, and see where we're at with things and what we're gonna do, come up with an action plan. I really feel good as far as communicating to people in an emergency. I really believe with our fire department and our police, we could get people out, because we're gonna have time to do that. But we also wanna make sure that, that people are aware that, hey, it's something we have to be concerned about here. If you live in the city of St. Genevieve, in certain areas, you gotta, just like when you're living by the creek, you gotta know that creek can come up and get you, So, there again, I think that's what we'll do. I'll get with David and we'll get some things together. And I would like to see us come up with an action plan, and we can do that. And then even because we can guarantee you, we're gonna have another flood event. Hopefully it won't be next year, but it could be. We don't know, it could be this fall. That river's slowly going down. There's a lot of water out there, still, but history's proven itself with the information we have. It's getting pretty regular.
Yeah, but not necessarily spring flood anymore either.
No, it's not, no.
It's at January 2nd.
Right now,
Yeah.
Chester.
Anybody got any other questions?
In the past, we always said, wait for the spring, and
Yeah.
it's all time of the year now. So.
Well, yeah. In 93 proved that all wrong. That was August. In 93 we had all the water here. That was the funny thing about it. People ask me, was the levee going to hold? And I keep telling them, I said, in 93 you folks built your own levee and it held. I said, this is a good levee. Always amazing. But again, you got to monitor. And we do have good people in place that, because I didn't have, and if you want to be educated, and that's one thing I like about the levee district, and the board members, Ernie took me down there and I got a great education. I saw how the pumps work. I have a good understanding of it, and not everybody has to have that. But, if you want to learn, you can. There's people down there that'll show you what's going on.
Like Norm said, there's a lot of stuff outside the pump house. There's 28 relief wells.
Oh, yeah.
There's monitoring wells that the Corps monitors.
A lot of intricate parts that make it work as good as what it does.
Like I say, I appreciate everybody that does all the hard work and keep the citizens safe, And I also told Bernie, I says, if there's water on Washington Street, Vern, they're not going to come to you. They're going to come to the mayor. They're going to come to the owner. And what did I tell you?
And I told you I was going to keep your streets dry this year.
That's right, because you kept telling me, he goes, well, I got to hold back some water to stay on top of these small boils that we have. I said, you can hold back all you want, but keep it off of Washington Street.
Yeah, and I did.
Because it is. It's a problem down there. It's a low-lying area. And when we're backed up, you got all our creeks backed up, and then when somebody called in City Hall and said there's no water running under the 3rd Street Bridge, well, no, there wasn't, because the water was backed up. And if there is water coming in, then you got problems, so.
The only place we got wet this year, we had the one flash flood. I already had pumps running, even though I had water backflowed into the back, inside of the levee for containment purposes. There on South Main, underneath the trestle. And that was the only place that was closed down for what, 2 hours?
Yeah, well, that happens with the
Yeah,
flash
you can
flood too.
spit real hard there and it's
Yeah,
gonna
you're
flood.
gonna get water there, so,
I always tell people, the pump outs can't pump it out until
Yeah.
it gets there.
Yeah.
that's right.
And that's the biggest problem we have, water can't get there, to get
But
pumped.
what is the, like right now, are the gates back open? When do the gates get back on where it's flowing straight through?
We won't open that until somewhere around 27.
27, that's when the gates open, because Bernie always told me, he goes, too, it runs through a lot faster than you can pump
Oh, yeah.
it. So even if it's this much, he goes, it's running through a lot faster than
It's
you
a
can pump.
16 by 12 opening compared to 20 to a 4-inch pump or a 4-foot
Right.
pump.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of difference.
If it should ever flood, did we ever consider asking the Army, the north end of town got isolated in '93 about a bridging system? You know, they build bridges across stuff. I don't know if you get Fort Leonard Wood to come in or somebody to,
But the way it works is that there's a program called WebELC that I'm on, what a lot of other people are on too. That anytime something like that happens, I can put a request in, it automatically goes to the state. They review it and send it out to the Guard, whoever. So if something like, we think we need a bridge someplace, I go to WebELC.
Okay.
That's how I get the sandbag, the plastic, go in there and punch it in, so.
because it wasn't in '93, we had a lot of people drive, I wasn't.
You gotta drive all the way out to Industrial Railroad and come in. Or, I working for the ambulance now, I slept over at the nursing home a couple nights with an ambulance, so we had one on the north end. And we had a fire truck stay on the north end too, so.
Just a thought, I mean,
Yeah.
they bridge rivers and everything else.
Yeah, like I said, anything like that comes up, we can request.
All right. Norm, anything else?
No.
No, I don't have anything. Thank you again, thank you all very much. So, I will, probably what we'll do is, about a month and a half or so, we'll reconvene. I want to, because what I don't want to do is have a good meeting like this and then come out of it with, well, what was that all about? We took some copious notes. We'll talk more about an action plan. I think that's going to be high on my priority list, and.
I mean, you don't have to do a full-blown emergency operation plan.
No.
You can specify it just for fall. So, I mean, you can narrow in on an emergency action plan just for that one event, one type of event. And that would be the simplest way. To the other ones, tornadoes and hurricanes and all that, it's hard to do
Right.
anything for that.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
We're adjourned. Thank you all. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Is this that